Today, I spoke with the family of Breonna Taylor. This morning, they were informed that the Justice Department has charged 4 current and former Louisville Metro Police Department officers with federal crimes related to Ms. Taylor's death. Those alleged crimes include civil rights offenses, unlawful conspiracies, unconstitutional use of force, and obstruction offenses.
So we got to talk about Breonna Taylor again. All right, Eric, you remember the Breonna Taylor case from about 2 years ago?
Yeah, it's what made you famous on YouTube.
Yeah, that case was like blew me up. It was just crazy. Mm-hmm. So now we got 4 cops who are being charged with civil rights violations.
Wait. I thought in your video you went through the whole case, you broke it down, and you said essentially they were justified, and the boyfriend himself was justified in self-defense because he was confused about the situation, and there were no charges. So I'm confused.
All right, so the state came in and looked at everything, and the state said, well, the warrant seems to be okay. The issue at the house seemed to be mixed up. The only one person to be charged was the officer who stood outside and shot and fired blindly into the apartment. He was actually charged, went to trial, and acquitted for what they call reckless endangerment, where, let's say, if I close my eyes and shoot into an apartment building, if those bullets can kill somebody, but if they do, then I'll charge with murder. If they don't, I'm charged with reckless endangerment, putting you in danger. So that's what that cop was charged with. He was acquitted. But now the Justice Department has come in, and they're not charging the cops who actually shot and killed Breonna Taylor with any civil rights violations. They're charging the cops with the paperwork violation who actually tried to execute the warrant. The people who put the warrant together, those are the people being charged with civil rights violations. And that last cop who was acquitted on state charges for firing blindly into the apartment, he's actually being charged with federal crimes because they're saying that his use of force violated the federal constitution. Now, the interesting part about that cop, the cop that was shot blindly, is that he was actually shooting at the other cops. And the reason why we know that is because the boyfriend of Breonna Taylor, when he initially fired his gun, he fired 1 shot, and then something like 20 shots were returned from the door by the cops who were at the door. The cop who was outside, Brett Hankerson, saw muzzle flashes, but he couldn't see inside because the blinds were closed. So he returned fire toward the muzzle flashes, would happen to be the other officers. So his bullets actually didn't hit Breonna Taylor. He was actually firing toward the other officers by accident. So that's the Breonna Taylor thing and what happened with the Breonna Taylor situation up until this point.
Okay. On the surface, this sounds like bullshit.
Well, you know what? Let's look at the Young Turks video.
Why do I have to look at their video? I already know what they're going to say.
No, we always, but this is the thing is the reason why we're going to look at it is so people in the audience will know when they're talking bullshit.
Okay. All right.
Breonna Taylor, because I was concerned that everyone had forgotten about the insane and unjust way she was gunned down by cops who indiscriminately shot bullets into her apartment. But luckily today, federal officials charged 4 current and former police officers in Louisville, Kentucky, who were in.
Dude, I can't stand it. Indiscriminately. What? Oh, I forgot. Is this still the old meme that she was taking a nap and just laying there? Everybody is just peaceful and asleep, and all of a sudden the cops just came and just went like it was the Sudanese Liberation Army minus people shooting back at them. I mean, what is this a scenario? Are we back on that with the Young Turks?
Yeah, again, they're sensationalizing it, right? So she's not saying they had a lawful warrant when they breached the door, somebody fired at them, and then they returned fire, killing Breonna Taylor. So that's what if they were being fair, that's what they would say. But we know this is the Young Turks.
Indiscriminately.
But to be honest with you, you make the argument that the cop outside was shooting indiscriminately, right? Because he didn't know what he was shooting at.
No, indiscriminate. Okay. Indiscriminate. Did she say indiscriminate?
She said indiscriminate.
Indiscriminately. Done at random or without careful judgment. Give me a freaking break. That, I guess, if we got to really parse the words, we can sort of give it to her, but she is misrepresenting what the hell happened in every which way, right?
Yes.
Would you not agree? Because
this was not indiscriminate.
There was even the cop that was shooting at the muzzle flashes, like you said. Well, there's muzzle flashes. He didn't just say, you know what? It's 2:24. Time to shoot around.
Yeah.
I mean, good God.
Yeah.
And
Don't. We're only 5 seconds in. Survive.
you do it. You pick the Young Turks, and I have to deal with this. And it's just not right. I mean, come on.
Play the video, man. Play the video.
Involved in that fatal raid on her apartment. Now, these are the first federal charges against any officer involved in the raid, and they do accuse them of several crimes, including lying to obtain a warrant. Finally, I remember covering the story and being so outraged that no one was focusing on the lie.
Okay. I've slept since then, Nate, but I remember you doing a breakdown. And if I recall, in that breakdown you did, they had absolute evidence that it was what kind of house was that? Not a drop house, or
It was a trap house. Well, you know what?
trap house.
So obviously, here on Nate and Eric, we look at the warrant. So here's the warrant, here's the detective. And these are the two people from that were listed on the warrant, Jamarcus Glover and Adrian Walker. Now, both of these people were just arrested for drug trafficking. There's a whole bunch of stuff. But so this is the evidence that they had. This car, this white car, this Chevy Impala, was registered to Breonna Taylor. This was traveling to and from trap houses.
Looks like a picture.
Oh, this is a picture. Yeah, this is a picture.
Oh my
of the
God!
white
And
Impala.
it looks like a clear driver's license plate on there too.
You can see the license plate. Yep, and you see on the warrant this number 10 on top. It says affiant was observed the above listed white 2017 Impala in front of 2424 Elliott Avenue on different locations. Now 2424 Elliott is this trap house, and you see the police car because the police had raided it. So there was a police raid, and you see the 2424 Elliott. A trap house is essentially a crack house. You guys, you know what a crack house is, right? Crack house is where people go buy crack, use crack, and then they leave. So that's what a trap house is. Trap house is another type of crack.
So
house.
if they raided it, did they find anything when they raided it?
Yes, they found a whole bunch of drugs, a whole bunch of stuff. Matter of fact, here is the news report.
Piles of drugs and guns. It's part of a big drug bust for LMPD, and we were there to see how it all went down.
As WDRB's Katrina Helmer reports, the investigation isn't over. Katrina?
3 suspects are caught with cocaine, marijuana, and drugs, but LMPD is not closing the case just yet. These houses were hiding secrets.
So in that news clip, you see they raided the trap houses. They found all these drugs and all this other stuff. Now they know these two people, Jamarcus Glover, Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend, and this guy Adrian Walker, who were both arrested from that other scenario.
You said
they were running the trap houses. Yes, that was her ex-boyfriend, Jamarcus Glover.
I see. And her current boyfriend is not involved, or was not involved.
But nobody was really sure if he wasn't involved. Essentially, this was a big drug ring that police were trying to break up, and the warrant was for that. But let's continue on with the video.
Unjust way, she was gunned down by cops who indiscriminately shot bullets into her apartment. But luckily today, federal officials charged 4 current and former police officers in Louisville, Kentucky, who were involved in that fatal raid on her apartment. Now, these are the first federal charges against any officer involved in the raid, and they do accuse them of several crimes, including lying to obtain a warrant. Finally, I remember covering the story and being so outraged that no one was focusing on the lie that was told to obtain the warrant for the raid in the first place. But there's more. It also accuses them of, other acts that led to her death, which I'm going to detail for you right now. So here's a reminder of what happened for those of you who need that refresher, because it did happen 2 years ago.
Can she get a refresher to what happened?
Let's see what she says.
Knocked down the door and fired a volley of gunshots after Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shot an officer in the leg, believing that intruders had burst into the home.
Oh, okay. You know what? Let's just use what she put up on the screen. I don't even need any of the other evidence you said. Just what she put up exonerates in a lot of ways. Okay, but during the nighttime raid, officers knocked on the door and fired a volley of gunshots after Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shot an officer in the leg. Now, I'm not going to question his justification, but don't play off like, they just randomly took their freaking guns out. Her own statement is stating that an officer got shot in the leg. Now, Nate, you're a cop. How many shots in the leg are you supposed to take?
Not supposed to take any shots in the leg. You know.
Well, no, aren't you?
Yeah.
Anna says you
No.
are. Right? No, you just get shot.
And you shoot back. Yeah.
No. If you do that, then that's indiscriminate, Nate.
Well, not if you're getting shot at. So.
No, you need to roll down and bleed, right? You got to take one for the team. Ask the Young Turks.
I think anyone would have that kind of reaction, right? Because it's a raid, it's a no-knock warrant, they burst into the home, and in self-defense, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shoots his gun.
Anyone would have that reaction? I've had the police beat on my door.
Well, I haven't had them break down my door, though. If they broke in and I had a gun, there may be a problem. I'm not going to, if I don't know they're the police.
Maybe. I don't know, but I'm just saying, anyone?
Yeah.
I don't know, but okay.
2 officers shot Taylor, a 26-year-old emergency room technician who was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, what spurred this raid in the first place? It's important to understand this context. So the cops had been investigating 2 men who they believed were selling drugs out of a house that was far from Taylor's, okay? So this is all about drug trafficking, which, by the way, no-knock warrants for drug trafficking, I think, is something that should be reconsidered, to say the least. But the cops said they believed that one of those men had used her apartment, Breonna Taylor's apartment, to receive the packages, and that's how they got the warrant for the raid. But here's the important part. Neither of the officers who shot and killed Taylor have ever been charged, nor are they named in the new indictments. The charges instead named 3 officers who were part of an investigative unit that obtained the search warrant for the raid, along with a 4th officer who was later fired from the department because, officials said, he had fired blindly into Taylor's apartment and struck a neighboring apartment. They were more concerned about the neighboring apartment than the fact that Breonna Taylor had been gunned down as an innocent individual who was in that apartment during this terrible raid.
The freaking language, gunned down. She was walking down the street and they lined up and they gunned her down. And where's the lie? She's saying they lied. There's a lie. They said that they thought that they took the drugs over, right? That's what they put in the warrant. Oh, I'm having trouble with the lie here.
Well, I
saw the footage. Yeah, I saw the drug dealers. I saw the trap house. I'm very confused about the lie here.
Yeah. Well, the lie is very specific because there are lies on the warrant. Just to be factual. Hopefully, she'll get into the lies because obviously she's getting, she's revving up the base, right? And, we've been saying this for years. So hopefully she'll get to the point where she can actually point to because there are some problems with the warrant, and I'm definitely going to say yeah. So we'll see. Hopefully she'll get to it. And I think this they're cheering about.
That former officer, by the way, the one who shot indiscriminately, Brett Hankison, already faced state criminal charges in that case, but those were the only charges that were ever filed until Thursday. But he was acquitted. The new indictment accuses him of federal civil rights violations. Now here is Merrick Garland.
Okay, Nate, you're going to have to work with me on this because that makes me crazy.
What
civil right violation? That makes me start thinking, okay, somebody's getting hate crime here or something. I mean, what is the civil right violation? And again, why is this a federal thing when he's acquitted by the state?
Okay.
I've had problems with a lot of this. Like, I don't even like hate crime. I think hate crime's wrong.
Well, 2 things. It's not a hate crime civil rights violation they're charging him with. It's a 4th Amendment civil rights violation. So for those of you who don't understand the way it works, first you have states, you have the federal government. They're called what's known as separate sovereigns. So just because you're acquitted by a state court doesn't mean the federal court can't also prosecute you under federal law. So that's what's called the separate sovereign doctrine. So double jeopardy doesn't really work when it comes to this. So the state can charge you for violating state law, the feds can charge you for violating federal law, and there's no double jeopardy.
Still feels like another bite at the apple.
It is. It's technically, that's exactly what it is. It happens in a lot of these cases. Rodney King, for instance, acquitted. The cops were acquitted state, federal civil rights charges. So that's generally the way the federal government gets a bite at the apple if they believe that the state did it wrong. And this was actually put into place to protect blacks and minorities from the South, because don't forget, this was the Jim Crow era and those type of things. So there was this enforcement mechanism from the 14th Amendment that said, hey, we want to be able to enforce when, let's say, like for instance with Emmett Till, with these white guys take and brutally lynch him, and then there's no, the federal government can't do anything. So that's why these civil rights violations, anybody can violate anybody else's civil rights. But in this particular case, civil rights violations from Hankerson is whenever you're trying to arrest someone and you use force, the Constitution considers that under the Fourth Amendment a seizure of persons. So I'm seizing you. Now, any type of search or seizure has to be done under what's known as reasonable. It has to be reasonable. It can't be unreasonable. You can't, if you have an unreasonable search, that search violates the Fourth Amendment. If you have an unreasonable seizure, that seizure violates the Fourth Amendment. So the Constitution protects reasonableness. As long as you can be seized and you can be searched, as long as it's reasonable. The state has a reasonable excuse. Here, they're saying that when Brett Hankerson was trying to seize or execute this warrant, he used excessive force in trying to seize these people. And that excessive force was not reasonable, a reasonable seizure.
His excessive force wasn't even toward the guy. So it's like, help me out here.
But the violation...
Whose rights were violated? Are we because of the neighbors? Because he could have hit a neighbor?
Yes. What they're saying is that by using excessive force to try to apprehend Breonna Taylor, that was violating her civil rights, because you can try to apprehend her, but if you apprehend her attempt to apprehend her with excessive force, you violated her rights because it's an unreasonable seizure.
But was the force against her or others?
It doesn't matter.
Her?
Well, no. The other cops shot her, but they're saying is that he attempted to shoot her. So if I'm attempting to seize you unlawfully or with unreasonable force, that is a civil rights violation. And they're saying because he did that to her, he was trying to seize her unlawfully under the Fourth Amendment, then those bullets that went to other homes, that was an unreasonable use of force against them also, because they weren't involved. See, those bullets would have been justified if he was using reasonable force. But since he's using unreasonable force, those bullets aren't justified, and he's violated those other people's civil rights as well.
And the other,
I know it's all
actually, it's complicated. The first way that you're in a pile of bullshit is when somebody says it's complicated.
Well, there is a lot of BS here. I'm not going to pretend, but this is
of it, a manipulator or whatever. Is you come back with a simple question like, okay, so the other cops have a civil rights charge? Well, no,
and
because they didn't. Hold on. When I say, oh, why is that? Oh, it's complicated. I'm like, okay, I see where we're going here. We're going here, especially because he didn't even shoot her. It wasn't even toward her. So we are trying to wrap our heads around a way to prosecute some people because we don't like that the state didn't prosecute them, and we want another bite at the apple.
Essentially, that's what's going on. Essentially, you're right. But the reason why the two cops who did shoot weren't prosecuted under these civil rights violations, because they didn't. Their firing wasn't unreasonable. Somebody shot at them, and they dumped 20 bullets toward the person who shot at them. So even though they killed Breonna Taylor, they didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't unreasonable for them to do that. What they're saying is the cop who was outside, it was unreasonable for him to do that. That's the violation. But the two cops who actually shot, one got shot at and they shot back. So the federal government couldn't, in good conscience, charge them with civil rights violations because their use of force was reasonable under the Fourth Amendment. But I told you it was complicated, and that's what I meant.
As in, we want something, and we are going to write our script and connect every line and dot we can to try to come to a conclusion. And this is my problem. I feel like they're arguing from a conclusion.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Somebody got killed. We don't like that person got killed. We're going to find a way to make somebody pay for this because it's politically expedient. And that's just bullshit. And that keeps the tribalism up on both sides.
Agreed.
Some of the charges in more detail.
So here it is.
The federal charges announced today
We can
allege
fast
that
forward into
members
this.
of the place-based investigations unit and Kelly Goodlett material information.
Breonna Taylor's in this affidavit used to obtain the warrant that Breonna Taylor's boyfriend had been receiving packages at Taylor's apartment. In fact, according to the indictment, the officers had no evidence of such packages, but misrepresented their case to the judge who authorized the raid. In fact, they claimed, in order to obtain the warrant for the raid, that they had spoken to the postal service about the packages that were being sent to Breonna Taylor. But later, a representative of the post office came out and said, no one ever said that. That is a lie. That is completely made up. And that element of the story drove me crazy because no one seemed to be focusing on that. And that was a huge, huge lie that led to the warrant that was used for this raid that ended up killing Breonna Taylor.
Okay. Is that in fact true that they claimed to speak to a postal officer about something and never in fact spoke to anyone?
You know what? Yes. Let's look at the warrant. So this is a place for the search warrant, the affidavit for the search warrant. So this on line 9 on the search warrant is where they said affiant, which is the officer, verified through the U.S. Postal Inspector that Jamarcus Glover, Breonna Taylor's drug dealing ex-boyfriend, allegedly, who's got monster charges, has been receiving packages at 3003 Springfield Drive. That's Breonna Taylor's address.
Mm-hmm.
Affiant knows through training experience that it is not uncommon for drug traffickers to receive mail packages at different locations to avoid detection from law enforcement. Affiant believes through his training and experience that Jamarcus Glover may be keeping narcotics and or proceeds from the sale of narcotics at Breonna Taylor's address. So that's what's in the warrant. And this is the part that's false. This first line that affiant verified through U.S. Postal Inspector. That's the lie on the warrant that's caused these indictments. But the issue that I'm having with the Young Turks is that they're making it seem like that's all the evidence they had of there being packages or this apartment or this house being involved in this situation, right? They're making it seem like that's all they had. But let me show you what else they had. So also on the warrant, which the Young Turks will not show you, is this right before that. So the cops needed to be able to determine how is Breonna Taylor's house connected to these trap houses and to all this drug activity. And the only way you get it is because the cars that they were using were making stops between the trap houses and Breonna Taylor's house. So here's the affidavit, number 8. I'm going to read it. On January 1st, 2016, during the afternoon hours, affiant witnessed Jamarcus Glover operating the listed red 2017 Dodge Charger. Mr. Glover pulled up, parked in front of 3003 Breonna Taylor's address. Then the police observed him walk directly into the apartment. Short time after, he exited the apartment with a suspected United States postal package in his right hand, and then went to the Dodge Charger and drove directly to a known drug house or trap house. Then these are the pictures the police officers have. Exactly what they say. There's the Dodge Charger driving up. This is Jamarcus Glover going into Breonna Taylor's apartment. Here he is coming out of the apartment, and here he is going into his car with the package in his right hand. So that is there. And then they have him going to the trap house. So
okay, well, the pictures help a little because I have to tell you, Nate, that gives me giant ass pause. Because what you have is the affiant, the cop, saying, I talked to the postal inspector and he said that there were packages going to this knucklehead.
Yeah.
And then the next bullet is from the same cop saying, I saw the knucklehead. Well, if you lied to me about the postal inspector, how do I know you're not lying about the guy going in and out? And so now we have pictures that seem to back up the second statement, but I'm still very seriously troubled.
Of course.
And it kills me to be troubled. I don't like being troubled and having the Young Turks have a point. But I can push back on that and go, wow, if you have a postal service saying that was a package that came from the postal service and it came to him, and it could be part of this, that's one thing. But how the hell do we know that? We know that he's carrying a package. Do we know that is a package that came from the postal service or just something he left at the house? And he said, hey, Breonna, I know we broke up, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I need to go pick up my sports cards.
Mhm.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
There's nothing telling me and nothing tying that together other than the guy's reputation and the fact it probably is true. I'm sure it probably was drugs and everything, but I am extremely troubled by the postal inspector lie, which I do think causes some stuff to fall apart after that, even with the pictures.
I agree. The postal inspector lie is a huge part of it. Is monstrous, and it makes you harder to believe. So the way I look at this is the postal inspector's a lie. So I'm assuming everything now on the warrant is suspect, but now the government has checked the other stuff on the warrant and found that it wasn't suspect. Those things were good. There's only 2 pieces on this warrant that are actualized, and that was the first one. The first one was this piece. So all the other stuff is actually legitimate. The fact that he was going back and forth. Now the thing is that with warrants, like you're right. You don't know what's in that package. He could have just been like, "Hey, I'm going to have something delivered to your house. Thanks for picking it up and go." That doesn't mean there's drugs. But and when you read through the warrant, it talks about the frequency of which this was happening. So if it's 1 or 2 times, it's one thing. But there were a couple of things. Number one, we had multiple cars registered to Breonna Taylor's address, going back and forth from the trap houses, and they have surveillance of that. But that wasn't on the warrant. But what you do have this car and the white car that again was traveling back and forth with packages from Breonna Taylor's apartment, not only to this one trap house, but to all these other different trap houses too. So this was
and that's all documented with.
So this is all documented. Let me share the warrant so you can just see it. So again, so the fans who are watching this also can see it too. This is the warrant. This is the actual warrant. This is Breonna Taylor's apartment. And you can see the red Charger right here in front of the apartment. But this is the apartment. This is the Charger that we were talking about that made frequent trips back. So the arrest warrant was also mentioned this. And you see the person of interest. And here are the items that they speak about of the reason why they think Breonna Taylor's apartment is a stash house, not a trap house, but a place where they have the thing. They talk about the poll cameras they have and the surveillance they have about the vehicles going into all these different trap houses. Then they talk about the connection between Jamarcus Glover and Adrian Walker going back and forth from Breonna Taylor's house to these particular houses. They talk about their history and how they were 10 days ago arrested for all these drug possession charges from these trap houses, and they were let out and they've started the business back up again. And then you also see in this, Affiant observed the red Dodge Charger make frequent trips to 2424 Elliott Avenue to Springfield Drive. Both Mr. Glover have been known to operate the listed vehehole. So they have all this.
He has pictures, because if he just says it, he's a liar, and I can't trust anything he said. So if he has photographs earlier, but he's got to have multiple. It can't be just the one trip.
Yeah, of course.
I want pictures of the white one. I want the red one. I want every trap house. I want to have, there's 27 visits here, all videoed or pictures. Because he's lied.
And of course, you can't trust any of this. Yeah. But what I'm saying is that the government is the one who went through this. Like the federal government, because they were checking this, they went through it and they picked out. So like, for instance, like you were saying with the white vehicle. Right. All right. So here is, for instance, pictures of, there's a black vehicle that is registered, Breonna Taylor's vehicle that's registered to her name. This is her vehicle. And that person you see driving it is Jamarcus Glover. And he took that vehicle from her house to the trap house. So he has a surveillance of that. So he has surveillance of the white vehicle, number 10 in the thing, the white Chevy Impala driven by Jamarcus Glover going from Breonna Taylor's house and parked in front of the trap house. So this is it. And they have those pictures of that vehicle going back and forth. So it's not like they didn't document what was going on. It just was like, I don't know why they lied about this, the postal inspector piece. No, I assume that they're lying about everything, but just now that most of this other stuff has been verified, the issue is now whether the stuff that we do know is true, whether that would have been enough for the judge to issue the warrant to search Breonna Taylor's apartment without the postal inspector piece and without the other piece that we haven't talked about yet.
I'm guessing probably, but I don't know.
But again, it's a judgment call.
Joshua Janes, a former detective who was also fired over his role in the raid, sent a draft of the affidavit to Kelly Goodlett. Another detective now facing charges in which he included the false claim about the packages, the prosecutor said. And prosecutors are alleging that those officers were aware that they had included false and misleading information to obtain the warrant. The third officer charged, Sergeant Kyle Meany, who led the department's investigative unit, approved the affidavit despite knowing that it contained the false information, according to the indictment. But somehow, if you don't think this is bad enough, it's about to get worse. Let's watch.
The charges announced today also allege that the officers responsible for falsifying the affidavit that led to the search took steps to cover up their unlawful conduct after Ms. Taylor was killed. We also allege that they conspired to mislead federal, state, and local authorities who were investigating the incident. For example, we allege that in May 2020, those two defendants met in a garage where they agreed to tell investigators a false story.
That's classic conspiracy.
That-
Meeting to tell investigators.
It
we
sounds
got
like
them.
legitimate charges on the
Those
cop.
are. Those are.
That's killing me, but it
When you
sounds
meet
to me like they padded the record to get a better warrant and then were covering their ass when they were going to get caught.
Yeah. But again, this is, and if this is legit, if they're saying it's true, and they instead of they could have easily just came out and said, hey, that piece we made a mistake. We thought it was, but it was incorrect. And take the L, but they went and tried to cover it up. And as we all know, you get hammered for the cover up and not the crime.
All the time. A lot of times there is no crime.
Yeah.
And you lie. I mean, the FBI is a nightmare because they bust everybody for lying to the FBI. and it could be a mistake.
Yeah.
You could be mistaken and you're busted for lying to the FBI. So that's why I would follow the advice of all of our lawyer friends, which is if you're ever questioned, sit there with an attorney.
And don't talk to the police.
At all. Sit there with the attorney and just whisper in the attorney's ear and let them state whatever it is to the cops, because there's no way I would feel comfortable on any of this. But yeah, God, I don't know what hurts more, her voice or my having to say she's got a point. Probably my having to say she's got a point. That pisses me off. I don't like her exaggerations and stuff, but yeah, they sound like dirty cops, and maybe they should be prosecuted. I don't know.
Well, we haven't even gotten to the rest of it. We're almost done. So
Just absolutely disgusting. Falsifying whatever they need to falsify in order to obtain the warrant in the first place. The raid ends up killing an innocent woman in her own apartment. And then there's a cover up, according to what Merrick Garland said there after the fact. And Emma, I'm wondering if you think that there will be a more receptive reaction to ensuring that justice be served for Breonna Taylor, especially now.
one thing they forgot to mention, even the Young Turks in there, haste to just shut it. Now, to be honest with you, if you just remove that one part, because it was 14 things listed, if you remove that one part about the postal inspector, the warrant may even still be good. Right, the warrant can even still be good because you had all those pictures and all that stuff of them running back and forth from Breonna Taylor's house to the trap houses. You could make an argument that we may have enough for a warrant without that piece of it.
I think you do. I think that the postal part was actually really completely unnecessary, because just because you receive a lot of packages, dude, I must be a drug dealer. I get more Amazon crap all the time than you can ever imagine.
Yeah.
And so you can accuse, I mean, half of the audience probably gets Amazon packages coming in and out, especially when, it's like, I can't find it locally. I'm always buying food products and everything. That's nuts. So why do you even have to add it? Because there's nothing proving that what was received in the mail is in fact drugs, unless
you don't know.
At some point you inspected the box, you sealed it back up, and you watched it get delivered to the house, and you watched them go sign for it or whatever. Then now you've got it. But I don't know why that would even be necessary. You could say that there's a lot of boxes, okay? They keep going here to these houses. We went to the house, and it's got a pile of drugs. We've been watching the houses. There's no other way these drugs can come in.
Mm-hmm.
So they must be the packages, unless, there's a tunnel. We couldn't find the tunnel. So all of that I totally get. So
and let's not forget too, for the warrant, you don't have to prove that there were actually drugs in the package. You just got to
No.
make it so that it's more likely than not, right?
Right.
It's more likely than not. For instance, why is it that these people are going back from this house to these 4 drug houses with packages, right? Is it more likely than not? And you start putting a story together. Now, I think the story they put together. Now, there's another part to the warrant that's also false, and I want to make sure we don't put to the fans. Now, here is a search that the police did for Jamarcus Glover, and if you know, you see one here. Now, there's 2 addresses listed here. If you see the first address, this is what the police system said was Jamarcus Glover's current address, probable current address, which is Breonna Taylor's address. So that's Breonna Taylor's address. So that was listed on his, like when you get locked up, hey, with your address, they listed that as his address. But the Justice Department said when they put that in the warrant that he lived at Breonna Taylor's address, so that was his current address, they didn't mention that they knew for a fact that he did not live at Breonna Taylor's address because they've been surveilling him for the past month. So they knew that he actually lived at the second address and didn't live at Breonna Taylor's address. So when they put on the warrant that he lived at Breonna Taylor's address and left out the fact that they knew from the surveillance that that even though he used the current address, Breonna Taylor's address, that he lived at another address, that omission also would not let the warrant seem legitimate because that omission that they knew he didn't live there but just was using that address was also bad.
And why would you do that? That's shady as shit. I mean, why don't you just flat out say he uses it?
Yeah,
he's there all the time. You know, I don't get it. That's what I hate. Is it's like, do you want to go to such a degree that you wind up lying? Because that's what it sounds like. It's like, oh, I don't feel like I have enough here. Why don't you work with what you had? If Nate, if I'm going in and out of your house 20 times a day, even though I might sleep here at night, I think people would question, why am I going in and out of Nate's house 20 times a day?
And going straight to drug houses right after it.
Right.
Yeah, like, oh,
I don't have to live there. I don't have
Yeah.
to live there for that to be a legitimate thing. It's like, he is there. He's there a lot. Why is he there a lot? Now, also, was this an arrest warrant or search warrant?
Search warrant.
Okay, so part of the search warrant is technically a fishing expedition. You're saying,
Yes,
I
correct.
suspect if you give me this latitude, Judge, I will prove to you that this stuff is there, because I'm sure I have all these reasons to think that in that house I'm going to find drugs, or I'm going to find whatever it is I'm seeking.
It's more likely than not that it's going to be drugs
Right.
in that house. Yeah.
Right. And so I am saying I want permission to prove my case.
Correct. Again, the issue is the question is for the court: is it reasonable for us to conclude that this may be drug activity? And I think here, if you put together what they had without, let's, and we can do that example. We can remove the postal. Let's remove the postal inspector thing and remove the fact that they said that he lived there, and add the context to it. So now you have these 2 people just arrested who are running, who were arrested before running these 4 drug houses. Now they're back up and running these 4 drug houses again, and you see what they're doing is going from one location, Breonna Taylor's house, to these other locations with packages. That's really essentially all you have. Is that enough for a search warrant? Now you also have, him going to this one, and you got this, the different cars. The fact that all the cars that the cars that she's registered under her name are all parked in front of these drug houses, going back and forth to these drug houses. Is this activity, this frequency of this activity, enough to believe that, hey, her house may be the place supplying drugs to these other locations, or do you need more?
I think it might be enough, but I'm not sure. And again, when you lie twice on the same search warrant, I don't know. But I'm saying, I'm kind of in that whole. I forgot who it was who said that you have to let 10 guilty people go free to have one innocent person, to cover them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like pencil whipping warrants. I don't like.
No, you're right.
That bothers me really deeply.
But I think the whole thing is giving everybody the all the information so they can come to the best decision. So you're right. So if we're saying the government in these indictments are saying that without those 2 pieces of false information, that warrant would not have been issued. and therefore Breonna Taylor would still be alive. So that's a life sentence now, because you're talking about it led to somebody's death. You're violating her rights by lying on this warrant, led to this warrant that would not have been issued and led to her death. So now, if the other side can say, well, even without the information that we lied about, without that information, this warrant would still be good.
You know,
So
what,
that's the part that's the part that they're going to have. That's the part that they're going to have to make, or the argument they're going to have to make.
All right. Well, I don't need to see the rest of the video on this.
No.
She's going to kill me. My eyes are going to fall out because I can't take it. I want to know what you think. I'm really torn about this, and I just don't like a lie, let alone two lies on a search warrant, because then it makes every other part of it extremely suspect because it's from the liar's lips. You lie to me now, and then you tell me something else. Now I've got to discount everything. So I'd have to rejigger the entire search warrant. That's a huge problem. So I think there may be a legitimate case for federal charges on this, but it doesn't matter what I think. And it doesn't matter what Nate thinks. What do you think?